I think the movie studios just gave away a huge amount of leverage, hundreds of billions of dollars allocated to health pandemic infrastructure. When we look at the progression of e-commerce spend and that pickup for ordering your groceries online, that behavior I think is going to be here to stay. And I think you're actually going to see an acceleration of the pain that the retail stores were experiencing pre-corona. We're starting to get an idea of what these lasting impacts are going to be because of the coronavirus. On Amazon Prime Video, you've seen an interesting option to be able to rent movies that are that would be in the theater for $20. I think movie theaters will never be the same. Not because people are going to be concerned about going into a movie theater and germs and that kind of stuff. Instead, I think the movie studios just gave away a huge amount of leverage to the tech monopolies, Amazon in this case, and I think they might be doing something similar with Apple and other players, maybe Google. But once you give $20, once you set the price tag at $20, you can't raise that price tag in the future. And once you now set consumer behavior that I can now watch a movie that's in the theater for $20 from the comfort of my own home, how do you change that consumer behavior? How do you roll that back? I think it's going to be very difficult. And I think you're going to see, it's going to take a while until people can go back to movie theaters. So I don't think this is just a flash in the pants, few week kind of thing. This is going to be a many months kind of behavior change here, where movies that aren't going to be delayed until movie theaters come back, movies that are now would be in the theater now you can pay $20, watch it from home. I think it's going to be very difficult for movie theaters to regain the same window of exclusivity that they had before coronavirus. I don't think they're going to be able to claw that back. Maybe they can claw some of it back, but even if they claw some of it back, the window of exclusivity from when it's in the theater versus now direct on demand on one of these video streaming products is going to be significantly shorter. And I also don't think that the movie studios are going to have much leverage to increase that price in the future either. So they're pretty much pegged at $20, which, by the way, $20 is, I don't know, 2 things of popcorn these days, not even including the tickets. So economically, it's also much cheaper to just watch it from your home. Might even be more comfortable. Certainly, it's going to be more safe for the next number of quarters. So I think that's going to be very difficult for movie theaters to bounce back, even once the pandemic fears have gone away. The other thing is with temperature scanners. I've been trying to research some companies here that do thermal imaging temperature scanners. I think that metal scanners are out and thermal imaging temperature scanners are in. There's this one company that seems like they're the main player in the space, FLIR Systems, FLIR. It's the world's largest commercial company specializing in the design and production of thermal imaging cameras, components, and imaging sensors. They actually have an FDA-approved thermal imaging temperature device already on the market. I think they're one of the only ones with this FDA-approved temperature scanning device. And surprisingly, their stock is way down from, roughly $60 a share at its peak. It's now at about $33 a share. I am not a temperature thermal imaging scanner expert, but from the little bit of research I've done, they seem to be one of the leaders. And I think these kinds of companies, I think there's been rumors that there's going to be yet another stimulus infrastructure bill. I think you're going to have hundreds of billions of dollars allocated to health pandemic infrastructure. And I think one of those key things is early detection systems. Whenever you're going to Asia, you see these things everywhere. Whenever you're in any kind of Asian airport, boom, they've got these. I think, you're going to see these at airports. You're going to see these at stadiums, any kind of mass transit terminal or location, right? These kinds of high profile or any kind of high security area that you're going into, you're going to see these types of things deployed. You're going to see a lot of money put into testing infrastructure and how can we do more rapid, immediate testing and have a network that is trying to find this kind of contact tracing infrastructure across the country. Those are going to be two no-brainers. You're going to see a huge investment in this from an infrastructure standpoint, right? You need to kind of build out the capabilities of these things. Obviously, you're going to see telemedicine and these other kinds of initiatives warrant more investment as well. But I think metal scanners are out and temperature scanners are in a very big way. You're seeing clearly huge changes in online spending. So we found this article recently here about the top 100 kind of e-commerce increases and decreases, March of 2020 to March of 2019. So lots of stuff that you would expect. Disposable gloves is the top. You have dumbbells on here, people needing to work out from home and all these kinds of things. And then you have the top 100 declining, right? Any kind of travel, hospitality, sports related gear is cratering and so on and so forth. But I think the general trend here is that everyone is needing to buy stuff online. And so when we look at the progression of e-commerce spend and that pickup for ordering your groceries online, these are user behaviors that a growing number of the population were partaking in pre-coronavirus. But now for the next number of months, this is going to be how many people transact. Certainly, hopefully, a large majority of people transact. And that behavior, I think, is going to be here to stay. And I think you're actually going to see an acceleration of the pain that the retail stores were experiencing pre-corona. That is only going to be accelerated post-corona. It'll obviously be better than during corona, since you can't go to a retail store at all. But post-corona, I don't think retail stores, I don't think, going into a grocery store, these kinds of behaviors are going to pick up and go and return to where they were pre-corona. I think they're going to be more suppressed, and the online version, ordering things through marketplaces, e-commerce sites, Instacart, these kinds of things are going to remain and continue to grow much more quickly than they were before. The last trend here is that we clearly are going to see we already had this trend going for the past few years in the United States, but now I think it's going to be reinvigorated, which is going to be Buy American. What are critical supply chain, critical infrastructure let's just take medical supplies, that we need those things to be made and purchased in the United States. So what you're seeing is that the United States doesn't even need to pass a bill or a law to start this change. If you think about the purchasing power of the United States government, just purely in medical supplies alone, you have the VA, you have the Medicare and Medicaid, you have other government programs for social welfare and so on and so forth, that a large amount of healthcare spend, medical supply spend, is controlled in one way or another by the government. And so that means that the government can simply say, hey, purely for, say, the 30% of spend that we control of this pool of medical supplies, we are only going to buy medical supplies if they're made in the United States. And if that supply chain, a certain amount of it is all from within the United States. And you're going to start to see these things, I think, happening very quickly here in a number of areas outside of medical supplies. I think when we just think about critical areas for the U.S. in terms of manufacturing capabilities for medical supplies and just infrastructure-related manufacturing, when you think about supply chain infrastructure, and all of these different areas that we've now seen come under pressure, where the fact of the matter is, if it's not made in the United States, you're seeing other countries put export bans or export restrictions to make sure that they have these supplies for their citizens. And look, you can't really blame them. We are using the Defense Production Act on U.S. companies to make sure that they're bringing enough product to the U.S. citizens as well. So you see this happening all over the place. And I think instead, if you think about, okay, how do we try and get the economy revving again post-corona? One of the mechanisms is to try and bring more of that production back domestically to the United States. So I think you're going to see very quickly, I think you're going to see government mandate that the things that it's buying, which is a lot, be made here. And then I think you're going to see a more coordinated push from a legislative standpoint that will probably be putting more restrictions on certain industries, or maybe using our president's favorite tool, tariffs, to try and instill that and have that come back. Hi, this is Alex from Winner Take All. Thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the content. Feel free to leave a comment, ask us questions, and definitely make sure to join us on our next live stream.